Good morning. Good afternoon. Hello. Como tally vous? Como está? Assalamu alaikum. What's up, bro? It's quite interesting. It's very interesting. I find it quite interesting. I've organized myself as to how I would approach my books and my children's play. I've organized it, and I know that I can do it at my leisure. So now that I've organized my time, excuse me, now that I have organized my time, I have more time to watch the world. I've been watching the world over the internet. I was spending so much time in U.S. and spending so much time in Africa that I overlooked other aspects of the world. I started looking at England. I began to look at England, and they are having riots in England. But you know what? I'm a human being. I'm a human being, and all of us are human beings. And we should accept the fact that we are human beings. We may be black, we may be white, we may be red, we may be yellow. Our eyes may go like this, or our eyes may go like that, but we're all human beings. Why am I saying that? Why am I saying that we are all human beings? The reason why I'm saying that is to justify what I'm getting ready to say now. I looked at England and I saw something, and it touched me. I was very much touched. I don't know. The pharaohs, they are shrewd, they are trained, and they are very intelligent. So here I am. I decided, I said, why don't you look at what's going on in England? You see what's going on in Africa, and you looking at what's going on in U.S., but a big thing is going on in England. You see, all of us are God's creations. We all, if you want to put it simply, all of us are God's children. He made us different so that we may know each other. Okay, I want to come back to another point, but I want to make another point before I come back to the point that I actually wanted to make when I decided to give this broadcast. Okay, let's say you and I, or I, we look in the world, and God gave us good health. He gave us healthy bodies. He gave us intelligence. So we look at something. We look at a man, and he has a tumor growing out of his chin. We look at a woman, and she has her eyeball out of her eye socket. We look at a human being, and they are born with tumors that are all over the body. We look at people with the eyes that God give us to perceive. God created everything. Did he not create those others? the others. Those who were born without arms and legs. God did that. God created those who are blind. What is it that God did not do? So as we look at the existence and we see everything, God did those things. God does everything. So we look at a child who has no arms or no legs, or we see a person suffering, great suffering. He's lost his family, he lost his wife, he's lost his child, he lost his job. And we look at these people. We are the other, and they are the other. And then we begin to have these feelings. We say, oh, this is so terrible. This man has no legs. This woman has a tumor growing out the side of her head. It's quite interesting. There's a speaker. This man has no arms and he has no legs. He can drive a car and he can lecture. So these are God's creations. What is it that God did not create? What is it that he did not do? So we look at these. We are the ones who he's given us good health and good minds. And we look at these people and we say, oh, but you know, when we look at these people who are unlike ourselves, or they're so terribly damaged as we look at them as physical human beings, and we look at them and we say, oh, this is so terrible. But that terrible exists in your mind, in our minds, because that person who has no arms, who has no legs, that person with tumors growing out of his body, out of his back, out of his head, that's how God created him. And when he came from the womb, that's all he knew. So the suffering is not so much as the one who we think is suffering, because he has already accepted what God has done. The suffering exists in our hearts. Those of us who God gave good health, who have everything that we think we're supposed to have. And then we look at those who are without the things that he gave us, and we pity them. And we say, oh, he's suffering. Look at this. This man has no arms, no legs. This man has no nose. This man has no ears. And we can run across, we can see people like this in our existence. And we say, oh, look at them suffering. But the suffering is in our minds. Because what has happened, God has made this creation. And this, who you say, oh, he's handicapped. Within this body, he who we cry for, pity for, he's okay. Because that's how he knew the world when he came from the womb. That's how he knew the world when he came from the womb. And he lives his life as he lives his life. And we perceive this person, or this we call it deformity, abnormality. And we perceive this human being with our eyes, and we suffer without pity. Why? What was that all about? It was about humanity, who we are. So I decided that I want to see what's going on in England. You know what? See, we have to be objective. We have to be objective. A beautiful thing is happening in England. Just because the English were colonialists, God bless them for how they praised the Lord. Just because they were colonialists. I speak the English language. My great grandfathers were slaves, but I speak the English language. And you can go a lot of places speaking the English language because a lot of people speak English. The England. There's a story. I think it was that England, at some point in time, the English, they practically ruled the whole earth. They ruled the world. Where am I going? What am I talking about? I'm talking about the riots in England. I'm talking about the riots in England. I turned to open my book. I went to England on the internet, and I saw all these English people. They were mixed. Some were dark, some were brown, some were yellow, some were white. But something beautiful is going on in England. The irony of it, the why of it. Do you know what is going on in England? I don't see. The pharaohs are shrewd. They are very shrewd. It may be one of their implementations. But what they are doing in England, what the English are doing in England, is beautiful. See, we are in an epic. We are in a new period in man's development. We are in a renaissance. We are in a renaissance. And you have particulars who will always be remembered when this world renaissance began. You're gonna, whether we like it or not, or whether we like him or not, we are in the Trump era. We're going through a renaissance. The world is going through a renaissance. I'm coming back to England. Okay? I open up my book. When I say open up my book, I go to the internet and click and see what's going on in the world. You got these wild Africans raising hell in Africa. And then you got these wise Englishmen raising heaven in England. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Do you know that the majority of the people who are demonstrating in England, do you know what they are demonstrating for? Multicultural societies. They listen to what they chant, and it looks like it's thousands of them. Thousands of Englishmen have taken to the street, and they have taken the streets because they too are God's people. Where am I going? What am I saying? This is what I'm saying. Okay, you had the Nazis. You had the Nazis. Well, not necessarily Nazis, but that mentality that came out into the streets, and they began to say they wanted all refugees to get out of England. But then the crowd quite that so many people in England, they came out and said, no, we do not accept Nazism. They say refugees are welcome in England. We need to study English history. We need to study why God gave them the power to take over the world like they did. They don't have the world like they used to. But once upon a time, they ruled almost the entire earth. The blessings from God. What in that culture? What's in the English, the British? What's in their culture to make them bring forth that type of protest? There's thousands of these Englishmen in the streets saying, no, we don't go for this racialism. We go for multicultural. We go for humanity. But this is going to take me somewhere else. But then maybe I'll come back to England. Let's talk about those people who were in bondage during the early Pharaoh's time. You know, many of us think that, this was a race of people. Oh, these were black people. Oh, these were Africans. Oh, no, these were Anglos. Oh, no, these were Asians. No. You know who God's people are? God's people are colorblind. God's people are black. God's people are white. God's people are red. And God's people are yellow. God's people are those people who want to work for God. They could be black. They could be red. They could be green. They could be yellow. But see, God made us different so that we may know each other. I think that in a way, when I search, when you get my age, you begin to reflect. And I reflect on my life. And I think the blessing that God gave me personally, I'll show you. There were 8 children. My brothers and siblings, 8 of us, born from the same mother and born from the same daddy. If you saw my mother, and she was, they said she was a white woman. And we would sit at the table. Because my daddy was a black African, there would be white kids, black kids, and brown kids. We all sat at the same table, brothers and sisters. So, it is not about the color of your skin. Now, why do I say we are in a renaissance? at what's going on in America. If we look at the Republican Party and we look at the Democratic Party, you have blacks, a lot of blacks in the Republican Party. And you have blacks and whites in the Democratic Party. We have a woman running for president. So when I look at what is happening in the world, we're in a renaissance. This is a renaissance. Because during this period, when I open the book, that is, when I look at the world through the internet, and the things that I see that are developing all over the world. Oh, there were two presidents. There were two, and there may be more. One was, I think he was from Ecuador, South America, one of those South American countries. The other one was from a European country, Australian. These were presidents of countries who lived with the people. They didn't fly on jets. They lived with the people. They didn't take large sums of money to lead the people. It's two. One is an Austrian and one is a South American. So when we look at the world, we have to be careful what we say. We have to be careful of what we do. Because you have to realize that everything that exists, everything that you see, everything that you perceive, it all comes from a divine source. So, it looks like we're in for a long stretch. People rising up. But when we begin to rise up for the right, so when we begin to rise up for righteousness, when we begin to be God's children, when we begin to be God's children, our blessings are tremendous. This is MUSAU MattmeachamJR signing out.